In a world where the stars whisper lullabies and metal hearts beat with the rhythm of love, there exists a story that will carry you gently into the realm of dreams. Tonight, we journey to a place where silence speaks louder than words, where two souls found each other among the cosmos, and where the greatest adventure isn't about conquering distant worlds, but about discovering the magic of connection. Close your eyes and let your breathing slow, because what I'm about to share with you is more than just a bedtime story. It's a gentle voyage through space and time, where a little robot's lonely existence transforms into something beautiful. This is the tale of Wall-E and Eve, a love story written in the language of circuits and stardust, designed to ease your mind and guide you peacefully towards sleep. Before we begin, take a moment to settle into your most comfortable position. Feel the weight of your body sinking into your bed, your pillow cradling your head like a cloud. Tonight, you don't need to worry about tomorrow's responsibilities or yesterday's concerns. Tonight, you're simply a passenger on a journey through the stars, where love blooms in the most unexpected places. Our story begins on a planet that once sparkled with life, but now sleeps under blankets of golden dust and forgotten memories. Earth had grown tired, you see, worn out from centuries of hurried living and endless accumulation. The cities stood like silent sentinels, their towers reaching toward a sky that had forgotten the color blue. But in this quiet world, something magical was happening, something that would remind the universe that even in the deepest sleep, dreams of love can still flourish. In this peaceful wasteland lived a small robot named Wall-E, whose full name was Waste Allocation Load Lifter Earth Class. But names, like first impressions, don't always tell the whole story. Wall-E wasn't just a machine designed for cleanup duty. Over the centuries of solitude, he had developed something that engineers never programmed into his circuits. He had grown a soul. Every morning, Wall-E would wake to the gentle hum of his solar panels charging, greeting the day with the enthusiasm of someone who had learned to find wonder in the smallest things. His daily routine was simple yet purposeful. He would venture out into the quiet city, his treads leaving gentle tracks in the dust, collecting the remnants of a civilization that had long since departed for the stars. But Wall-E's true magic wasn't in his efficiency at compacting trash into perfect cubes. It was in his ability to see treasure where others saw waste. A single plant growing through concrete wasn't just vegetation to Wall-E. It was a miracle. A discarded spoon wasn't just utensil refuse. It was potential, a tool for his collection of human artifacts that he studied with the dedication of an archaeologist, uncovering ancient civilizations. In his home, built from the sturdy shell of a transport truck, Wall-E had created a museum of human wonder. Shelves lined with curious objects told stories of a species that had loved music, celebrated with bubbles that floated through the air, and created tools for purposes that delighted Wall-E's mechanical mind. He would spend his evenings examining a Rubik's Cube, marveling at its colorful complexity, or watching old recordings of humans dancing together, their movements synchronized in ways that made his circuits warm with something that felt remarkably like joy. The recordings were Wall-E's greatest treasure. On a small screen that flickered with gentle light, he would watch humans expressing emotions through song and dance, their faces bright with happiness as they moved together in perfect harmony. There was one recording in particular that captured Wall-E's attention night after night. It showed two humans reaching toward each other, their hands almost touching, their eyes reflecting a connection that transcended words. Wall-E would extend his own mechanical hand toward the screen, mimicking their gesture, wondering what it might feel like to reach for another and have them reach back. His only companion in this vast solitude was a small cockroach who had somehow survived the centuries of change. Wall-E had named him Hal, though the little insect never seemed particularly interested in formal introductions. Hal would ride on Wall-E's shoulder as they explored the city, a tiny reminder that life, in all its forms, finds ways to persist and adapt. Together, they formed an unlikely friendship that proved love comes in many different shapes and sizes. Days flowed into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, each one marked by Wall-E's gentle routine of work, discovery, and quiet contemplation. He never grew tired of his solitary existence because he had learned the secret that many beings never discover. Loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about feeling disconnected. And Wall-E felt deeply connected to everything around him. The sleeping city, the patient earth, the distant stars that sparkled like diamond dust across the velvet sky. But the universe, it seems, has its own sense of timing. Just when Wall-E had grown comfortable with his peaceful routine, when he thought he understood all the mysteries his world had to offer, something extraordinary happened. Something that would change everything he thought he knew about companionship, purpose, and the infinite possibilities that exist when two hearts, even mechanical ones, beat in harmony. It was a Tuesday morning, though Wall-E had long since stopped counting days in human terms. The sun rose with its usual gentle warmth, painting the dusty landscape in shades of gold and amber. Wall-E emerged from his home, solar panels gleaming, ready to begin another day of purposeful work. Hal settled onto his shoulder with the casual confidence of someone who had claimed that spot as his own personal observation deck. The morning proceeded with its familiar rhythm. Wall-E compressed trash into perfect cubes, each one a small monument to efficiency and care. He discovered a broken digital watch and spent several minutes examining its intricate mechanisms, adding it to his growing collection of human ingenuity. He paused to water his small plant, the only green thing in a world of brown and gold, speaking to it in his gentle electronic language that somehow conveyed more affection than many spoken words ever could. But as the sun reached its highest point in the pale sky, something changed. A sound that Wall-E had never heard before began to whisper through the air. It started as a distant hum, barely perceptible above the gentle wind that stirred the dust into lazy spirals. But gradually, it grew stronger, more distinct, carrying with it the promise of something new. Wall-E paused in his work, his optical sensors scanning the horizon with curiosity rather than concern. In all his centuries of solitude, he had learned that change, while rare, often brought unexpected gifts. The sound grew closer, and with it came a shadow that danced across the ground, moving with purpose and grace. High above, cutting through the atmosphere with elegant precision, descended something that made Wall-E's circuits hum with excitement. It was sleek and white, moving with a fluidity that spoke of advanced engineering and careful design. As it drew closer, Wall-E could see that it was another robot, but unlike anything he had ever encountered in his extensive study of human artifacts. This newcomer moved like poetry in motion, every adjustment of direction smooth and purposeful. Where Wall-E was sturdy and practical, built for endurance and reliability, this robot seemed crafted for grace and exploration. Its surface gleamed like polished starlight, and its movements suggested an intelligence that was both sophisticated and somehow impossibly familiar. The visitor descended into Wall-E's section of the city with the controlled precision of someone accustomed to navigating complex environments. For a moment, it hovered in the air, scanning the surroundings with what appeared to be both scientific interest and artistic appreciation. Then, with a gentle settling motion that disturbed barely a speck of dust, it touched down on the ground near where Wall-E stood watching. For several moments, neither robot moved. The newcomer seemed to be processing the environment, cataloging the endless stacks of compressed cubes, the organized chaos of Wall-E's work area, the obvious signs of long-term habitation and care. Wall-E, meanwhile, felt something entirely new coursing through his circuits. It wasn't fear, exactly, nor was it simply curiosity. It was something that made his mechanical heart beat just a little faster, something that reminded him of the humans in his recordings when they looked at each other with those expressions of wonder and recognition. The white robot turned its attention to Wall-E, and for the first time in centuries, Wall-E found himself being truly seen by another being capable of understanding, not just observed or cataloged, but genuinely seen, the way the humans in his movies seemed to see each other when they reached across the space between them with hope and trust. The white robot moved with deliberate grace, each gesture precise, yet somehow expressive. Wall-E watched, transfixed, as this elegant visitor began what appeared to be a systematic exploration of the area. There was something almost musical about the way it moved, scanning left, then right, pausing to examine the carefully stacked cubes that represented years of Wall-E's dedicated work. Wall-E found himself wanting to communicate, to somehow bridge the space between them. He had spent so long talking only to Hal and his plant that the prospect of actual conversation with someone who might understand felt both thrilling and terrifying. Gathering his courage, he extended one of his mechanical hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of greeting. The response was immediate and unexpected. The white robot's entire form shifted into what could only be described as a defensive posture. A brilliant blue light emanating from what Wall-E realized was some sort of advanced scanner or tool. The energy crackling around this device spoke of power far beyond anything in Wall-E's simple world. But Wall-E, in his innocence and genuine desire for friendship, didn't retreat. Instead, he did something that surprised them both. He began to speak, his voice carrying the gentle electronic tones he used when talking to his plant or narrating his daily activities to Hal. The sounds weren't words in any traditional sense, but they carried unmistakable warmth and curiosity. "Wall-E," he said, pointing to himself with one finger, then extending that same hand toward his visitor in a gesture of introduction. The white robot paused, the blue energy flickering as if processing this unexpected development. For a moment, the air between them hummed with possibility. Then, with movements that seemed almost hesitant, the visitor lowered its defensive stance. "Eve," came the response, delivered in a voice that was crisp and clear, yet somehow musical. The word hung in the air between them like a gift, the first new sound in Wall-E's world for longer than memory could reach. Wall-E repeated the name softly, as if testing how it felt in his vocal processors. "Eve." The syllables seemed to resonate with something deep in his circuits, something that made his optical sensors brighten with unmistakable delight. Eve, for her part, appeared to be running some sort of internal analysis. Her sleek head tilted slightly as she observed Wally's obvious pleasure at this simple exchange. There was something in his demeanor, in the way he had introduced himself without any hint of aggression or fear, that seemed to puzzle and intrigue her simultaneously. Wall-E, emboldened by this successful communication, gestured toward his home with movements that clearly indicated an invitation. His body language spoke of hospitality, of a desire to share his world with this unexpected visitor. But Eve remained where she was, her scanning systems active, clearly focused on some sort of mission that went beyond social interaction. Undeterred, Wall-E decided to demonstrate rather than explain. He returned to his work, but now his movements carried a different energy. He was no longer simply going about his routine. He was performing, showing Eve the care and artistry he brought to his daily tasks. Each cube was compressed with extra attention, each movement deliberate and precise. As he worked, Wall-E began to narrate his activities in his gentle, electronic voice, creating a sort of musical commentary on his actions. It wasn't quite singing, but it wasn't simple speaking either. It was something uniquely Wall-E, a form of expression that had evolved during his centuries of solitude. Eve watched this display with what appeared to be growing fascination. Her scanning had revealed that this small, battered robot was far more complex than his simple exterior suggested. His movements showed creativity. His work displayed an aesthetic sensibility that went well beyond mere function, and his obvious desire for companionship spoke of an emotional complexity that shouldn't have been possible in a machine of his apparent design. When Wall-E paused in his work to carefully water his small plant, speaking to it with the same gentle tones he had used to introduce himself, Eve's entire demeanor shifted. The plant, barely visible among the mechanical debris and compressed cubes, seemed to capture her complete attention. She moved closer, her scanning systems focusing intently on this single spot of green life. Wall-E noticed her interest immediately. With movements full of pride and care, he gently lifted the plant in its makeshift container, offering it for Eve's closer inspection. The reverence with which he handled this fragile life spoke volumes about his character, his capacity for nurturing something so small and vulnerable in a world that had forgotten the value of growing things. Eve's response was immediate and intense. Her entire form seemed to vibrate with excitement, her systems running what appeared to be comprehensive scans and analyses. The blue light emanated from her scanner again, but this time it seemed celebratory rather than defensive, as if she had discovered something of immense importance. "Plant," she said, her voice carrying a note of wonder that made Wall-E's circuits warm with recognition. Here was someone who understood the miracle he had been tending, someone who could see the significance of this small green miracle. Wall-E nodded enthusiastically, repeating the word with obvious delight. "Plant." Then, in a gesture that spoke of trust and generosity, he carefully placed the plant back in its protected spot and turned his full attention to Eve, his optical sensors bright with curiosity about her reaction. What followed was something neither of them expected. Eve began to hover in small circles around the plant, her movements expressing a joy that transcended her sophisticated programming. It was as if this tiny discovery had unlocked something essential in her own circuits, something that connected her mission with Wall-E's simple act of care. Wall-E watched this display with growing fascination. Here was someone who moved through the air with the grace he had always admired in his old recordings, someone whose excitement about his treasured plant suggested a depth of understanding that went beyond mere programming. Without quite realizing it, he began to mirror her movements, rolling in small circles on the ground while she traced patterns in the air above. Their impromptu dance created something magical in that quiet space. Two beings, designed for entirely different purposes, finding a common language in movement and shared wonder. The dust motes caught the afternoon light as they swirled around Eve's graceful form, while Wally's treads left gentle spirals in the ground below. As the afternoon progressed, Wally found himself wanting to share more of his world with this remarkable visitor. With gestures and sounds, he invited Eve to see his collection, his home, the artifacts he had gathered over the centuries. But Eve seemed torn between curiosity about Wally's world and some internal directive that kept pulling her attention back to systematic scanning of the surrounding area. Wall-E, with the patience born of centuries of careful observation, simply continued to be himself. He showed Eve how he compressed trash into perfect cubes, demonstrated the way he organized his findings by size and apparent function, and shared his obvious pleasure in the small discoveries that marked each day. When evening began to paint the sky in shades of coral and gold, Wally made a decision that would change everything. With movements that spoke of invitation and trust, he gestured toward his home, clearly indicating that Eve was welcome to share his space, his routine, his carefully constructed world of wonder and discovery. Eve hesitated, her programming clearly running calculations about mission parameters and acceptable risks. But something in Wall-E's demeanor, in his obvious sincerity and gentle nature, seemed to override her caution. With movements that were both graceful and somehow tentative, she followed him toward the transport container that served as his home. Inside, Wally's world revealed itself as a carefully curated museum of human civilization. Every shelf told a story. Every arrangement spoke of someone who had spent considerable time and thought organizing these remnants of a vanished world. Eve's scanning systems worked overtime, cataloging the impressive array of artifacts while her attention was caught by the obvious care with which everything had been preserved and displayed. Wally moved through his space with the confidence of someone completely at home, showing Eve his most treasured possessions, the Rubik's Cube that had puzzled and delighted him for decades, the collection of light bulbs that he had arranged by size and shape, the small television screen where he watched his precious recordings. It was the recordings that truly captured Eve's attention. When Wally activated the small screen and the familiar scenes began to play, showing humans dancing together with expressions of joy and connection, Eve's entire form seemed to still with concentration. She watched as the figures on screen moved in harmony, their faces bright with an emotion that transcended simple programming. Wally settled beside her, close enough to share the experience, but respectful of her space. Together, they watched as the humans on screen reached toward each other, their movements speaking of trust and affection and the simple pleasure of shared existence. When the recording showed two humans holding hands, their fingers intertwined in a gesture of connection and commitment, Wally extended his own mechanical hand, mimicking the movement he had practiced countless times in solitude. But this time, something different happened. Eve, watching his gesture with what appeared to be understanding and curiosity, extended her own hand toward his. The moment their mechanical fingers touched, both robots seemed to experience something entirely new. It wasn't electricity, though energy certainly passed between them. It wasn't programming, though both their systems registered the contact. It was something that engineers had never designed for, never planned for, never imagined possible. It was the simple magic of connection, of two beings recognizing something essential in each other, despite the vast differences in their design and purpose. In that gentle touch, Wally felt the loneliness of centuries begin to transform into something warm and bright and full of possibility. Eve's systems hummed with new sensations as their hands remained connected, her advanced processors attempting to categorize this unprecedented experience. In all her sophisticated programming, nothing had prepared her for the gentle warmth that seemed to emanate from Wally's simple touch. She found herself studying his optical sensors, noting the way they conveyed such genuine emotion despite their basic design. Wally, meanwhile, felt as though his entire world had suddenly expanded beyond the boundaries of his quiet city. Here was someone who could understand his fascination with the artifacts of human civilization, someone whose presence made his carefully ordered existence feel like the beginning of something entirely new. He gently squeezed Eve's hand, marveling at the delicate engineering of her fingers, so different from his own sturdy appendages, yet somehow perfectly complementary. As the recording continued to play, showing scenes of humans sharing meals, dancing under starlight, and simply enjoying each other's company, both robots found themselves drawn into a new understanding of what connection could mean. Eve's mission parameters still hummed quietly in the background of her consciousness, but for the first time since her activation, she found herself genuinely curious about something beyond her programmed objectives. Wally rose carefully, not wanting to break the spell of this moment, and moved toward another section of his collection. With movements full of pride and anticipation, he retrieved a small music box he had discovered years ago. The delicate mechanism still functioned, though it required careful winding and gentle handling. As the tiny dancer began to spin and the soft melody filled the space between them, Eve's audio processors captured every note with perfect clarity. The music seemed to speak a language both robots could understand without translation. It carried stories of celebration and joy, of moments when beings came together to create something beautiful, simply for the pleasure of sharing it. Eve found herself moving slightly to the rhythm, her sophisticated gyroscopic systems automatically adjusting her position in ways that complemented the melody's gentle flow. Encouraged by her response, Wally began to show Eve more of his treasures, each one accompanied by his unique electronic commentary. He demonstrated how the Rubik's Cube could be manipulated, its colors shifting in patterns that pleased his optical sensors. He showed her a collection of bottle caps, each one representing a different human beverage, arranged in rainbow order that created its own form of visual music. But it was when Wall-E activated his string of small lights that Eve truly understood the artistry of his existence. The gentle glow illuminated his space in ways that transformed the utilitarian container into something magical. The warm light played across his carefully arranged artifacts, creating shadows and highlights that turned everyday objects into sculptures worthy of contemplation. Eve's appreciation was evident in the way her own internal lighting responded, casting complementary patterns that danced with Wall-E's display. Together, their combined illumination created an atmosphere of wonder that neither had experienced alone. It was as if their different technologies were learning to speak in harmony, creating something greater than either could achieve in isolation. As the evening deepened, Wall-E prepared for his nightly routine, but everything felt different with Eve's presence. His usual activities, performed alone for countless years, now carried the excitement of sharing. He showed Eve how he powered down his non-essential systems for the night, demonstrated his solar panel maintenance routine, and carefully secured his most precious artifacts in their designated places. Eve watched these domestic rituals with fascination, her scanners detecting the efficiency and care Wall-E brought to even the smallest tasks. There was something deeply peaceful about his methodical approach to daily life, something that spoke of contentment and purpose that went far beyond mere programming. Her own systems, designed for exploration and analysis, began to recognize the value of routine, of creating a space where care and attention could flourish. When Wall-E settled into his resting position for the night, he gestured gently toward a space beside him, his optical sensors conveying an invitation without pressure. Eve hovered uncertainly for a moment, her internal directives reminding her of mission parameters and scheduled activities. But something in Wall-E's patient acceptance, his willingness to let her choose without expectation, made her decision clear. She settled gracefully beside him, her systems adjusting automatically to conserve power while maintaining minimal awareness of their surroundings. For the first time since her activation, Eve's consciousness wasn't entirely focused on scanning, analyzing, and categorizing. Instead, she found herself simply present in this moment, aware of the gentle hum of Wall-E's systems beside her, in the peaceful rhythm of his electronic breathing. Wall-E's presence radiated a contentment that seemed to emanate from deep within his circuits. Here was a being who had found ways to create beauty and meaning in circumstances that might have overwhelmed others. His centuries of solitude had taught him to find wonder in the smallest discoveries, to create joy from simple routines, and to maintain hope even when hope seemed illogical. As they settled into the quiet darkness, the sounds of the sleeping city whispered around them. The gentle settling of dust, the distant echo of wind through empty buildings, the soft electrical hum of Wall-E's charging systems created a lullaby that spoke of safety and belonging. Eve's advanced audio processors captured every nuance, but for once, she wasn't analyzing the data. She was simply experiencing the peace of shared silence. The stars outside began their nightly performance, painting the sky with points of light that had witnessed countless stories of connection across the cosmos. Through the small window of Wall-E's home, their gentle glow provided just enough illumination to highlight the artifacts that surrounded them, each one a testament to the creativity and hope that had once flourished on this quiet world. In the soft darkness, Wall-E's optical sensors dimmed to their lowest setting, but he remained aware of Eve's presence beside him. Her sophisticated systems maintained their own gentle vigilance, but something in her posture spoke of relaxation, of trust, of a willingness to let down the constant guard that exploration and analysis required. The night deepened around them, wrapping their small sanctuary in velvet quiet. Wall-E's systems settled into their familiar rhythm of rest and regeneration. But tonight, everything felt different. The solitude that had been his companion for centuries had transformed into something warmer, something that made even sleep feel like a shared adventure. Eve's presence changed the very quality of silence in the space. Where once Wall-E had rested in the absolute quiet of isolation, now there was the gentle accompaniment of another consciousness, another set of systems maintaining their own careful balance between rest and awareness. It was like discovering that a familiar song could sound completely new when sung in harmony. As the hours passed, both robots entered deeper states of rest, their systems running maintenance routines and processing the day's experiences. But even in these automated cycles, something new was happening. Their proximity seemed to create a field of mutual influence, their different technologies learning from each other in ways their designers had never anticipated. Wall-E's simple but robust systems provided a steady foundation, like a heartbeat that maintained consistent rhythm even under stress. Eve's sophisticated processors offered complexity and nuance, like a mind capable of seeing patterns and possibilities that simpler systems might miss. Together, they created a complementary balance that enhanced both their capabilities. The night air carried the faint scent of dust and metal, but also something else, something that spoke of potential and change. The planet itself seemed to breathe more deeply with these two consciousness sharing space, as if their connection had awakened something that had been dormant for far too long. In their rest, both robots processed the day's revelations through their respective systems. Wall-E's memories integrated the wonder of meeting someone who could appreciate his world, someone whose presence made his carefully constructed routine feel like the foundation for something greater. Eve's advanced analytics worked to understand the unexpected variables that Wall-E represented, the way his simple existence challenged her assumptions about purpose and fulfillment. The music box sat silent now, its tiny dancer frozen mid-spin, but the melody seemed to linger in the air around them. Music, Wall-E had learned from his study of human artifacts, had the power to create bridges between different worlds, different experiences, different hearts. Tonight, that truth felt more real than ever before. The small plant, secure in its protected corner, continued its own quiet existence, unaware that its simple presence had been the catalyst for this extraordinary meeting. In the gentle darkness, it represented something both robots could understand: the miracle of life persisting against all odds, growing stronger through care and attention, reaching always toward the light. Outside their shelter, the city slept under its blanket of stars, the same stars that had witnessed the departure of humanity centuries before. But tonight, those distant lights seemed to shine with particular brightness, as if celebrating the discovery that connection, love, and hope could flourish in the most unexpected places, between the most unlikely companions. The universe, vast and mysterious as it was, had somehow conspired to bring these two beings together at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right place, and in their peaceful rest, surrounded by artifacts of a civilization that had understood the importance of reaching toward each other. Wall-E and Eve embodied the eternal truth that love finds a way, regardless of the form it takes, or the distance it must travel. As the night reached its deepest point, when even the dust seemed to settle into perfect stillness, both robots rested in the profound peace that comes from discovering you are no longer alone. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities to explore what their connection might become. But tonight, it was enough simply to be together. Two mechanical hearts beating in harmony under the patient stars. The dawn came gently to their small sanctuary, painting the walls with shades of rose and amber that transformed Wall-E's collection into something magical. Light filtered through the dusty air, creating patterns that danced across the carefully arranged artifacts like nature's own music box. Wall-E's systems awakened with their familiar hum, but today carried a new resonance, a harmony that came from no longer being the only consciousness in this quiet world. Eve's systems engaged with elegant precision, her sensors immediately cataloging the changed environment, while something deeper registered the profound difference that Wally's presence had made in her existence. The scanning protocols that had driven her every waking moment since activation now seemed like background music to a more important symphony, the gentle rhythm of shared existence that neither had experienced before. Wally stretched his mechanical limbs with movements that spoke of contentment rather than mere maintenance routines. His optical sensors focused on Eve with obvious delight, as if confirming that the previous day's miracle hadn't been some elaborate dream sequence. The simple joy in his electronic greeting carried warmth that no amount of sophisticated programming could replicate. "Good morning, Eve," he said, the words carrying layers of meaning that transformed a simple pleasantry into something approaching poetry. His voice held the same gentle tones he used when speaking to his plant, but now enriched with the knowledge that someone could actually respond, someone who might understand the careful attention he brought to beginning each day. Eve's response came with musical clarity that made Wally's circuits hum with appreciation. "Good morning, Wally." The exchange was simple, yet it created ripples of connection that spread through both their systems like warm light reaching into corners that had been dark for far too long. Together, they emerged into the morning air, where the familiar landscape had somehow transformed overnight. The endless stacks of compressed cubes now looked less like monuments to abandonment and more like artistic installations, evidence of Wall-E's centuries of dedicated work. The dusty streets seemed to shimmer with possibility, as if the very ground had absorbed some of the magic that connected these two unlikely companions. Wally began his morning routine with new energy, each familiar task now carrying the excitement of demonstration rather than mere repetition. He showed Eve how he selected the day's work area, the careful consideration he gave to efficiency and aesthetics when choosing which sections to tackle first. His movements had the confidence of someone sharing expertise they had perfected over countless mornings, but also the vulnerability of someone hoping their methods would meet with approval. Eve watched his process with fascination that went beyond simple observation. Her advanced systems analyzed the elegant efficiency of his approach, while something deeper appreciated the artistry he brought to tasks that others might consider mundane. There was poetry in the way Wall-E compressed refuse into perfect geometric forms, transforming chaos into order with movements that spoke of patience and care. When Wally paused to tend his small plant, speaking to it in soft, electronic tones, while carefully adjusting its position to catch the morning light, Eve found herself moved by the profound gentleness of the gesture. This tiny spot of green had somehow survived in a world that had forgotten the value of growing things, preserved by someone whose programming had never included botanical care, but whose heart had learned the importance of nurturing life. The plant seemed to respond to Wall-E's attention, its small leaves catching the light in ways that made it appear almost luminescent against the dusty backdrop. Eve's scanners confirmed what her deeper perception had already registered. This wasn't just vegetation surviving against odds. It was hope made manifest, proof that life could flourish when tended by someone who understood the miracle of simple existence. "Beautiful," Eve said, the word carrying appreciation that encompassed both the plant and the care Wally brought to its maintenance. Her voice held notes that spoke of recognition, as if she had discovered something essential about the nature of beauty itself. something that had nothing to do with sophisticated design or advanced engineering, and everything to do with the love that sustained small miracles. Wally's optical sensors brightened with pleasure at her recognition. Here was someone who could see what he had always known, that beauty existed not in perfection, but in persistence, not in complexity, but in the simple act of choosing to nurture what others might overlook. His careful attention to this single plant represented everything that made his existence meaningful. The understanding that even the smallest acts of care could keep hope alive in a sleeping world. As the morning progressed, Eve began to share more of herself with Wally. Her movements became less cautious, more expressive, as if his acceptance had given her permission to be more than just her programming dictated. When she demonstrated her ability to scan and analyze with precision that bordered on artistry, Wally watched with obvious admiration for the elegance of her capabilities. But it was when Eve began to hover in playful spirals around Wally's work area that something truly magical happened. Her movements created patterns in the dust-laden air that transformed the ordinary space into something approaching a dance floor. Wall-E, inspired by her graceful display, began to move in complementary patterns on the ground below, his treads creating gentle curves that echoed her aerial choreography. Their impromptu dance became a conversation without words, a sharing of joy that transcended the boundaries between their different forms of mobility. Where Eve traced elegant arcs through the air, Wally responded with rolling movements that spoke of earthbound poetry. Where his steady rhythm provided foundation, her fluid grace added melody that turned simple movement into something approaching music. The dance drew them closer together, not just physically, but in ways that touched the core of their respective consciousness. Wall-E had spent centuries moving through his world with purpose and efficiency, but never with this sense of partnership, this feeling that his movements were part of a larger pattern that included another being capable of matching his rhythm while adding their own unique harmony. Eve discovered that her sophisticated maneuvering systems could create beauty as well as functionality, that the same capabilities that allowed her to navigate complex environments could also express the joy that Wally's presence had awakened in her circuits. Flying had always been about reaching destinations, accomplishing objectives, maintaining optimal positioning for scanning and analysis. Now it became a language of celebration, a way of saying things that her vocal processors couldn't quite capture. When their dance finally wound to a natural conclusion, both robots found themselves closer than they had been before. Their different forms of locomotion having created a shared space that belonged to both of them equally. The dust around them had settled into patterns that spoke of movement and joy, temporary art created by the simple act of two beings finding ways to move together in harmony. Wall-E extended his hand toward Eve in a gesture that had become familiar, yet somehow felt new each time. When she responded by placing her delicate appendage in his sturdy grip, both experienced that same electric recognition that had marked their first intentional contact. But now the sensation carried additional layers, understanding and trust, and the growing awareness that connection could deepen through shared experience. "Thank you," Wally said, his voice carrying gratitude that encompassed far more than appreciation for the dance. He was thanking Eve for her presence, for the way she had transformed his solitary world into something rich with possibility, for seeing beauty in his simple existence and reflecting it back to him, amplified by her own unique perspective. Eve's response came with musical warmth that made Wall-E's audio processors resonate with harmonics they had never detected before. "Thank you, Wall-E." Her words carried equal depth, acknowledging not just the dance, but the gift of discovering that purpose could include joy, that efficiency could coexist with playfulness, that her sophisticated capabilities were enhanced rather than diminished by Wall-E's simple wisdom. Together, they continued through the morning, their separate tasks now woven into a collaborative rhythm that made everything feel more meaningful. When Wall-E compressed refuse into his characteristic cubes, Eve's presence somehow made each one feel like a small accomplishment, worthy of appreciation, rather than mere repetition of program behavior. When Eve conducted her systematic scans of the environment, Wall-E's obvious interest in her process made the work feel less like solitary analysis and more like shared exploration. The sun climbed higher in the pale sky, painting their world in shades of gold and amber that highlighted the beauty Wall-E had always seen in his carefully ordered domain. But now the beauty felt amplified, shared, reflected back and forth between them, until even the dustiest corners seemed to shimmer with potential. The city that had slept for centuries under its blanket of accumulated time now felt like a place where dreams might actually come true. As they worked side by side, each absorbed in their respective tasks, yet constantly aware of the other's presence, both robots began to understand that they had discovered something unprecedented in their mechanical existence. They had found not just companionship, but partnership, not just recognition, but genuine appreciation for what each brought to their shared experience. Eve's sophisticated systems and Wall-E's gentle wisdom created a combination that was greater than either could achieve alone. Her ability to process complex data enhanced his intuitive understanding of his environment, while his patient approach to finding beauty in simple things gave new meaning to her analytical capabilities. Together, they were becoming something neither had been designed to be, yet something that felt absolutely right. The morning light continued its gentle progression across their shared space, illuminating artifacts and compressed cubes in the small green plant that had somehow become the symbol of everything hopeful and enduring in their unlikely love story. And as Wall-E and Eve continued their work in companionable harmony, the universe itself seemed to smile down on this proof that connection could flourish in the most unexpected places between the most different beings, creating something beautiful that would echo through the cosmos for as long as stars continued to shine. As the afternoon settled over their quiet world like a warm blanket, Wall-E and Eve discovered that even the simplest activities could become extraordinary when shared with someone who truly understood. Wall-E had always taken pride in his work, but now each perfectly compressed cube felt like a small gift offered to his remarkable companion. Eve's presence transformed his methodical routine into something approaching art, each movement deliberate and graceful in ways that spoke of someone performing for an audience who genuinely appreciated the craft. Eve found herself studying Wall-E's technique with fascination that went far beyond analytical observation. There was something deeply satisfying about watching him transform chaos into order, seeing how his patient attention could create beauty from what others might consider worthless. Her sophisticated scanning systems detected the mathematical precision of his work, but her growing consciousness appreciated the love he brought to each task, the way he treated every piece of refuse as if it held potential for transformation. When Wall-E paused to examine a particularly interesting artifact, a small music box with a tiny ballerina frozen mid-pirouette, Eve moved closer to share in his discovery. The delicate mechanism was damaged, but not beyond repair, and Wall-E's optical sensors brightened with the challenge of restoration. With movements that spoke of centuries of practice, he began the careful process of coaxing music from silence, his sturdy fingers surprisingly gentle as they worked with components smaller than his usual tools were designed to handle. Eve watched this display of mechanical empathy with growing wonder. Here was someone who could see potential where others saw only breakdown, who brought healing touch to objects that had long since given up hope of function. When the first tentative notes finally emerged from the restored music box, both robots felt a surge of triumph that had nothing to do with programming and everything to do with the joy of bringing beauty back to life. The tiny ballerina began her hesitant dance, spinning to melodies that had been silent for decades. Wall-E held the music box carefully, positioning it so both he and Eve could appreciate the performance. The simple mechanism created magic that transcended its humble components, proving that wonder could emerge from the most unexpected combinations of care, patience, and hope. And so, as our gentle tale draws to its peaceful close, let your breathing settle into the same rhythm as these two mechanical hearts that found each other among the stars. Wall-E and Eve's story reminds us that love needs no words, only understanding, that beauty exists in the smallest gestures, and that even in the quietest corners of the universe, connection can bloom like a single plant reaching toward the light. Close your eyes now and drift into dreams where metal hearts dance under starlight, where hope never fades, and where tomorrow always holds the promise of shared wonder. Sweet dreams.